Okay, Peg, we're on.
Thank you. Today is May the 2nd, 2006. We're at the Gaelic American Club doing an interview with Arthur Stritch. With us today, Sally O'Hara taking notes, Kevin Collins, who is taping for us, and Peg O'Leary, who's doing the interview. And we're at the Gaelic American Club, 74 Beach Road in Fairfield. Okay, Arthur. Hi.
Hello, Peg. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good.
It's very nice to have you sitting there in that seat. I'm
It's
just
really
going to
to be
start
here.
off with some real easy questions that you won't have any trouble at all answering. Like,
Okay.
what's your name?
Name is Arthur Stritch.
Arthur, any middle name?
Arthur John Angelo Stritch.
Okay, and how did you come across those names? How did those names come?
You know, Arthur after my grandfather
On which side?
on my father's side.
Okay.
Okay, his name was Atty, and so it would be Arthur. And John, I think the Pope died or something like that. No, Angelo, the Pope died when I was born, so the mother had to say Angelo. And John, I took it as a confirmation name.
Okay. And what part of Ireland are you from? Would you tell me the county, the parish,
The
that whole
county,
business?
I'm from a small little village called Clonlara. So Clonlara is the village. It's about 10 miles from Limerick City. And Clonlara is in County Clare, about 20 minutes ride from Shannon Airport.
Very convenient.
Yeah.
And now, was that actually where you were born, was in Clonera?
No, I would have been born in Limerick City, which would be the nearest maternity hospital.
So you were born in a hospital?
In a hospital, definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is the date of your birth?
Date of birth is the 1st of June 1963.
Okay. And do you have siblings?
I have two siblings. I'm the oldest. My brother is the next oldest, and his name is Peter Stritch. And then my sister is the youngest, and her name is Breed Stritch.
Okay. Yeah. Where are they now?
My brother's at home on the farm, okay, and my sister emigrated to the States about 25 years ago, and she now lives in Staten Island. She's married and lives in Staten Island.
Okay. Now, were your parents and your grandparents from the same area that you were born in?
Parents were always were in the same area. Grandparents were also in the same area. Yeah, within about 5 mile radius.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now your parents, where you grew up, was in a farm setting, correct?
Was in a farm setting, and the land commission was set up, and that was set up to distribute the land more evenly among farmers. So my mother tells us that she put in that for a change of farm, instead of having small little fields, in Ireland they call them a bicycle farm, because you have to ride a bicycle to get to all these little fields. So instead of doing that, she put in to it that they'd swap all these little patches of land for one farm that would be have everything. All the fields would be together. So they were lucky enough to get a farm that was local, and it was Belisle farm they got.
Belisle. Now, Belisle. Is that the name they gave it, or was that called Belisle?
That it was actually the locality, and they got about 160 acres or something like that. They were very, very lucky, and because they didn't have that many when they swapped it, and so it would be Belisle, French for beautiful island, and that's the locality. You know.
Had that been previously owned with a name like that by someone that was a French extract or something?
I would say so. Yeah. But we don't even know. You know, just that it has been that locality. It was Belisle. The next area would be Springfield, and they all have their own different names. Yeah.
And both your parents were born in Clare?
Both parents born in Clare. Mother was born in higher mountain, so she would have been called Mountainy.
Okay.
Whereas father would have been born in the lower area, and the land would have been better. So they'd always tease each other that she was from the mountain, whereas he was from the pastures.
And did they both grow up on farms, or
both? Oh yeah.
Okay, so that was kind of a predetermined thing.
It would have been predetermined, definitely, now there was a match, so that but they were both from farms, and both knew like farming routine, and therefore all generations back would have been farmers.
Now, when you say there was a match, were they actually matched?
They were matched by the local shopkeeper,
Oh my goodness.
who said my mother was saying, hey, what, there's nothing happening in this area, basically saying, hey, so the local shopkeeper says, hey, there's a nice young man, Mick Stritch, and he enjoys going to the pubs and all that. He's very quiet. Would you ever be interested in him? So Mom says that she says, hey, what's he going to do to me? So she says, yeah, okay. So the shopkeeper made the match. Nancy Nocton was her name. She made the match, and she got them together. And so Mom says that when she went out, and she says she couldn't, because he had the reputation of being a drinker and going to the pub and carousing and being partying. But she says that when she met him and talked to him, that he was very nice.
And
So
she fixed him up, changed his ways a bit.
he saw the light. Praise the Lord.
And what was
Well, actually, he did, but then he didn't, in the sense that so they'd go out they'd go out, and I don't know where they went. They never went to a pub, because women didn't go to pubs like then in those days. And so they went out, and he would drop her back home, and she thought that like he would go home too, but little to realise that he'd go to the pub afterwards. And she didn't. The only reason she found out was that the pub was raided by the police
and his name?
after hours. And she copped on. Someone said to her, "Oh, Mick Stritch was caught in for after hours by the police." So that's how she knew. So she says, "Hey, she put blinkers, which is basically like when a horse,
Yes.
you'd tie him down a bit, and yeah. So that's what she did. She said yes."
And what was your mother's maiden name?
Mother's maiden name was Egan, Margaret Egan.
Okay. All right. So it's Michael Stritch.
Mick Stritch, Michael Stritch, Mick Stritch, and Margaret Egan. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Now, if you were standing in your home, and I know that house is still there where you grew up.
Yeah.
How old were you when you moved to the new farm?
I was about 4, I think.
Oh,
4.
so you really pretty much grew up in Belle Isle.
Grew up, yeah.
So if you were standing, now I'm just going to say, looking out the kitchen, the back door, looking out at, what would you have seen as a young child? Not what you see now, but if you look back in your mind, what would be your memory of standing and coming out that back door?
The back door of Belle Isle would have been basically a shed, cow shed, and a hay barn, and you'd have cows and calves, we'll say, within 20, 30 feet of you. Yeah.
And did you have a lot of cows? What kind of cows were they?
They'd be milking cows, to be dairying that they were in. So they would like you'd have all your cows and everything near you, so that if anything happened to them, or when they'd be calving, that you would that they would be able to go out straight away and look at them. Because when their cows calving, they'd have to be. My father would be up 2 and 3 times a night.
Now it's a little more modern. They have television.
They have TVs and all this stuff, and place totally different scene altogether.
Yeah. So and then you had 160 acres. So did you also have gardens planted and things like that?
No, it would have been dairy cattle, and then you'd have the calves born, and they would be with their mothers for about a week. And that would be to get the bee stings, it was called, and that would be just to get the antibodies over onto the calf, and for immunity. And then after about a week or less, the calf would be taken from the mother, and it was my mother's job then to raise those calves, and then the cow would go in, and she'd be going with the main herd to milk.
So there wasn't a long period there.
There wasn't, and you'd hear calves and cows bawling at each other, trying to get back. But it would only be for about a day or two, But so you'd hear all this stuff going on at night time, even also. But you got so used to it eventually. It was like
it's probably like a train going.
Like a car passing the road nowadays. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And how many cows would you have had at that time?
They wouldn't have had. They would started off. Before the land changed, they had, I think, was 5 cows or 6 cows, and then before they retired, I think they were up to about 110, 120 cows. But with that came, like they were milking cows in an open field before all that.
How did that work? did you work? How could you milk?
My parents, mother and father, would drive. They said in a pony to the fields, and that they would drop me off at they'd either bring me with them, or they'd drop me off at a house, nearby house, and that the cows would get so used to it the minute they'd see my parents coming that they know, hey, it's milking time, so that they would actually milk the cows by hand, and stroke them on the cows on the back to calm them down, and then milk them. But some of the cows would get so used to it and they'd know what to do that they'd just walk and kick the bucket as they'd walk by, and the bucket of milk would be spilt. So that's termed kick the bucket.
Exactly. Yeah, kick the bucket. And so, what did they carry? Those big milk cans with them to?
They'd have there was a 15-gallon tankard and a 25-gallon tankard, and they were heavy. But the milk would have to be sieved.
Yes.
With a sieve first, which would basically like a sheet, and the milk would be warm, body temperature, and they'd put it into the tankard with a sheet to drain, to clear away any hairs from the cow or any dirt, and then they'd keep that tankard there, and they'd every day then they'd, after milking the cows, they'd go to the creamery, take the milk to the creamery. Which is a whole socialisation in itself.
Yeah. Did you get to go to do that with your parents?
We would have, yeah. When we went to the new place, definitely, yeah, you would, because he'd be with the car, and he'd have a trailer, and he'd have about 5 or 6 tankards on it, and they'd have to be lifted up onto a stand at the creamery, and then chucked into a bigger vat, you know.
And did you? How old were you when you started becoming an active member of taking care of the farm?
I would say within I would say the milking times you would be, and that was when we were 2 years old, you know, so all the time really from birth basically. You're
already a part of what's going on all the time.
Yeah, you had to be, you know, even to stopping cattle, to be taking them here, taking them there, you know, every hand that was around would be used. Yeah.
And now, who lived in your home with you?
My grandparents lived with us. Granny and grandpa.
Fathers?
My fathers. Mm-hmm. My mothers had passed away, so my fathers, because it was their farm land that was switched, that they switched with the land commission. So both my grandparents on my father's side would have came with us.
And would you describe what the house was like? How, you know, what the construction and type of a house it would be called?
The construction of the house that we left, and I would have been about 4 years of age, would have been a 2-story house. There was no plumbing in it, no running water, and there'd have been no bathroom. There would have been no outhouse, so they'd have used the ditches. And there'd be a well down the road, so they'd have to go and get water from the well. And it would have been in the village of Clonlara, so that they wouldn't, you know, they'd be central to stuff but they wouldn't have bought much. So they'd have the chickens and all their own meat, and they raised pigs and all that kind of stuff. But then when they switched the land, they would have still have had their pigs. Like I remember having between 5 and 10 bonhams, and they'd sell some, keep more. And like my mother would always have had about 100, 200 chickens, and laying hens and that kind of stuff that she'd sell as well as keep for the house.
Yeah. And the house there is what type of construction?
So the new house in Belial is a bungalow, and it was I remember mother telling me that it was 4-bedroom, which would have been big at that time, and the reason it was big was because I had a brother, an uncle on each side that were priests in England, so a bedroom had to be kept for them.
Oh.
Yeah. Stipulated by
law there.
Not by law, but by my grandparents.
Oh, okay.
You know, because when they came home, and they'd come home once a year, that they would have had a room.
And would that room really be kept just for them?
Oh, to this day, and one of them has passed away. It's Uncle Peter's room or Uncle Arthur's room. Yeah.
So it wouldn't have gotten used when they weren't there for somebody else's bedroom?
No.
Wow.
Yeah.
Talk about a guest room.
Yeah. Not only guest room, guest bedroom. Yeah.
And now that house was built. Was that built with all the mods and cons? The kind of
It would have been built with mods and cons. Yeah, it was built definitely with electricity, TV, everything. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
must have been a big change for them to go from.
My mother still says that my grandmother, when she went there, used to go out with. She'd have the pea pot still, and she'd go out in the yard looking with the bucket. It was a galvanized bucket to go to the well. And I remember my mother saying telling me that she'd say, "Hey, Granny," she says, "we have water now in the house," and she'd say, "Oh my God," she said, "I keep forgetting." Yeah.
I bet that's a huge change when you
It
grew up
was. Yeah.
all your life with that. How about school? What was school like in those days? Where did you go to school and how'd you get there?
School, I went to Limerick City School. Okay, and we bypassed the local school, and the reason we did was my mother said that you get a good education and that we wouldn't have the country accent. So she has, I think, a bit of grandeur. She thought she had a bit of grandeur, you know.
So was it a public school or what
It was public school. Most schools over there are public schools, and they'd be Catholic, ran by the priests and nuns. Because I was educated with priests and nuns until I was 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so were they Jesuits or I mean what kind of brothers?
You know,
or
Sisters of Mercy.
Okay.
And the priests. I don't know what they. Not Jesuits. I don't think Jesuits. Yeah.
Okay. And how was school? Was it a large school? I take
It would have been a large school. It would have Scollida in Corbally, so it would have in Limerick. It would have been babies would have been would be the first class. The first class you went into would have been a nun. A nun taught it, and Sister Pierre, and she. There was no more than 20 in it.
in the classroom.
Yeah, in the classroom, yeah. But they were each separate classrooms, but that would have been considered state-of-the-art schools,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah.
And how did you get to school?
My father and mother drove us in every day. You know, we didn't get the bus because there was no bus to the inner city schools. And so it was also the country bumpkins coming in, you know. It would have been a big thing too.
How was it when you were the country bumpkin coming into a city school?
It was great because we didn't know, like they would have been sent from a city, but we didn't know because we wouldn't, you know, have seen it, you know. You wouldn't have seen semi-detached house. We wouldn't have seen those. You wouldn't have them out in the country, so we really didn't know what we thought their living conditions were the same as ours, and I'm sure they thought ours was the same as theirs. The only difference is when we'd go picking mushrooms in the to be July or August, July I think, we'd be bringing in the teachers' mushrooms or bribes, and they'd be the wild mushrooms, so they'd be delighted with that. Whereas the inner city kids wouldn't have a clue where, you know, what they were, or well, they'd know what they were, where they came from. Or we'd bring in eggs, you know, the free range eggs, as bribes.
And you're talking about mushrooms now. How did you learn what mushrooms were safe to pick?
You know, you learn from an early age because they were everywhere, you know, and you knew the white mushroom, you know, would be the one that you'd pick, and you'd make sure, like, even if you'd leave them there, if there were little buttons, you'd leave them there and come back the next day and pick them up. And you'd like it being home because they were great mushroom soups. There'd be milk, and they'd put them on the range also, and leave them on and slow cook them. You know, so you'd know because they were good to eat.
Do you still see those now and then?
You do, yeah, we do, yeah. My kids, now at this stage, yeah.
Incentive to be in Ireland in July or August.
Yeah, let me tell you, it's lovely. Yeah.
What kind of things did you do on it? Just pick an age, any age you want, and tell me what a day would have been like for you during that time.
For a 12-year-old, you'd be milking the cows in the morning. Okay, if you were on, we dread holidays, because that meant you worked.
So you didn't look forward to the
Not really. The first week of holidays was fine, but after that you knew what you were getting into. You know, yeah. But you would, in the morning time, you'd help milk the cows and hunt them down, so because the cows would come back and try and eat. You'd give them nuts, which were little cubed nuts you'd give the cows. But the ones that had just been milked would try and run back and steal it from the ones that were being milked. So your job was to hunt those off. And so you'd